Here at Petal Academy, it's Sunday morning. The sun's been out. We had, what did we do? Spring forward. So a lot of you are probably adjusting to the time change. I know I am. Welcome everybody. Hopefully you're nice and cozy and having a lovely Sunday morning. I'm gonna do some fun little bud vases this morning. So I've grabbed myself a vanilla chai latte. Me and Rob make our own. Rob's behind the camera, so if you have any questions when you're watching, you can go ahead and ask away. We'll do our best to answer them. I forgot to put my apron on this morning, but that's okay. We're just gonna dive right in. So bud vases, you can use a myriad of different types of bottles and things like that to do arrangements. But one of my favorite things is milk glass. I have a little collection of them. But recently, my son, when we were sort of gathering things from my grandmother's house, we found these really cool vintage bottles. So I've had these for quite a few years, and we cleaned them all up. But these were probably pop bottles that my dad used once upon a time because they were in my grandmother's house in the basement years and years ago. So really fun vintage pop bottles are great. So I've got some really cool ones here. This one's like new grape, so I'm pretty sure that there's probably a grape flavor, but with a yellow label. Team, so if anybody out there remembers these and remembers what they tasted like, maybe you can send us a message. And then we found this really cool one, Suncrest, which is also really cool, bottled in Toronto. And then of course, you know, your vintage Coke bottles. I think these are a little bit newer, and then I've got a vintage Sprite bottle. So you could use anything, but I decided why not do some milk glass with a combination of some of these vintage pop bottles. And this could be a really fun spring idea. So the other thing that you'll notice I have here in front of me is I think it's often nice when you're doing something like this to put it on a tray. So another thing that I've gathered is I had this really cool glass tray that was my grandmother's. Really cool, so really pretty cut glass. I think when you're doing a collection of bottles, you could just lay them on a table. They're really fun. The reason I love this idea or this approach to centerpieces is because it's really versatile. So oftentimes if you're hosting a dinner, whether it be Easter or any specific spring event, we just had International Women's Day yesterday, so just want to send some happy thoughts out to all the women in that watch or that hopefully had a chance to take some me time over this weekend and remember all the amazing things that we are about as women, what we bring to the table in our lives and for those around us. So just sending a message out for that. But if you're hosting an event or dinner or anything like of the sort, oftentimes it's really cumbersome to have this big floral arrangement in the middle of the table. So bud vases really allow you to kind of move them through the tablescape. They're great for long tables because they allow you to sort of stretch the look of the flowers all the way down the table. You can add candles in between them. I'm going to show you a couple of LED candles that I have, and votives and things like that are great. So all you need is just, and you can use any bottle, any collection of bottles. As I said, like I'm using these pop bottles because they're cool and just something fun. But I think adding them to a tray, if you're trying to do something that's more concentrated in the middle of the table, is a great idea. So a tray could be fun. But you really just want to vary the heights a little bit when you're doing this. So you can incorporate a bit of varied heights. So I'm going to approach this as one center piece, just with different flowers. And I've got a fun collection of Gerbera's ranunculus and some alstroemeria and things like that I'm going to use. And then I also cut some ivy because, again, like you could add some ivy and greenery around the bottom of this. I'm going to show you that a little bit later too. So really quickly, if you were going to add candles to this, I have these really cool LED candles, which I love because you don't have to worry about them burning down or setting your flowers on fire. So it's just and these are pretty cool. They're becoming a lot more popular. I've had these for like 10 years or something because years ago when we were doing events, we often got rules and regulations about not being able to use live candles. So these can be really great. I'm just putting them into a milk glass bottle here. They won't fit in my pop bottles, that's why. So just look for a vase that they'll fit in, like a little bud vase that they'll fit in, or a bottle, and they can be great as stands. And to add weight, I just added some water to these as well. So that's one way that you could add candles to this particular type of centerpiece. I'm going to pull those out for now. But let's dive in here with some blooms. So when you're approaching this kind of design with just bud vases, you want to keep it on the simple side. And I actually have wired my Gerberas already. I went ahead and did that already. So we just put a couple of thinner wires and we pushed them into the head, and then we twirled them around the stem. That's all you want to do. Another quick thing I want to mention about Gerbers particularly, because they're one of the, I think, kind of a fun springtime favorite, because they're just so happy and they sort of have a really nice pop of color. But they also don't love to be in water up their stem. So just a little bit of water. So you can see, like, I haven't put very much water in these bottles because they don't need a lot of water. So you can easily just, you know, they'll want a fresh trim, nice clean bottles, and then you can add them in wherever you like. I'm actually going to trim that down just a little bit lower, nice and low in here, because I want that color to sort of sit at a nice level there. But you want to keep this fairly simple. I know I've got like a thicker stem here of a ranunculus. I'm wondering if he'll go into one of my, he'll go into one of my pop bottles there. I've got a little tulip here, which is kind of cute. So I'm going to add him in here. Just a little bit of color. You want to vary the heights just a little bit when you're doing this. So a little bit of staggered heights in here. I've got a little bit of Alstroemeria here. Just going to clean up the foliage. And you just want to vary the heights a little bit. I'm staggering these flowers at a few different heights. And I've already wired my Gerberas as well. So I've just taken those wires. And as you're doing this, like you can see, I'm kind of just making sure that there's that big pop of color. So those Gerberas are going to be really important for that as the focal point. And then I'm just going to have some varying other flowers kind of surrounding it a little bit. And you don't need a lot for this kind of an arrangement. You can do something really, really simple with just a few varieties of flowers. So this is kind of a fun one to do if you're gathering stems. You know, if you're grabbing a market bunch and it's got a bunch of variety of stems, could be really fun to do this. Or if you're doing this with just a few stems that you grabbed from a local florist. So not a big investment at all. And just really simple, just kind of just like so. I'm going to add a little bit of greens in here, just a little bit, because I want to just add a bit of spring to this. So what I'm adding is just a little bit of ruscus, so Italian or Israeli ruscus, that's what this one is. Just to a few of these bottles, just to give me a little bit of height and a little bit of interest in here. And if you have room in some of your vases, you could add some other, like 2 or 3 stems to each little vase if you prefer. You don't have to, but if you prefer, you could do that as well, just to bulk them out a little bit more. Just add a little tulip to one of them there, just so you can see. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of bear grass and add that really simply into a few of these vases. And bear grass, you can let it go just loose in the vases. Sometimes I find that you might want to trim the tops a little bit if they're a little bit long and sort of, you don't want them to get in anyone's dinner plate or anything like that. So just be a little mindful of that. And oftentimes you don't need a lot of the bear grass. You could just tuck just a little highlight of it in just a few little vases. Just enough to kind of give you that line in some of these vases, but just really simple. And then, so just to take it a step further, I'm going to quickly show you too. So this would be the look just with flowers. So all I've got in here is about 6 vintage pop bottles. in a couple of milk glass. I love the way the milk glass picks up on the white lettering of the vintage bottles. I think that's kind of important, just if you're pulling that in there, just to have a bit of a repeat of that white. But you don't even have to use those as flower holders. You could use them for candle holders as well. And I showed this a little earlier, but just like so. So if you wanted to sort of change it up and add some candles to this collection, you could just simply do something like this. And then you've got the ability to add some candles into this collection as well. And I love these candles because they are LED and you don't have to worry about them burning down and setting anything like this on fire because they're not open flame, they're just battery. So I've also filled these vases with water to give them some weight, which is really helpful if you are using them for candles. It really does help kind of give you a little bit more oomph in that vase. But yeah, just really simply, if you're changing it up, let's put those flowers back inside so we can see what that looks like again. And I'm going to give you one more little thing that you can try here with these vases. So I've got a few ranunculus, a few gerberas, a couple of Peruvian lilies or alstroemeria that I've put in here. And then one other fun thing that I cut from the garden this morning, I was really happy to see that I could finally find it. I have some ivy that grows just kind of rogue in my garden. So one other thing that you could try just to kind of add a bit of greenery is just add some cut greens around the bottom and create almost like a wreath or a nest around the bottom. You could even just take random ivy leaves and just kind of place them, you know, on people's napkins or around the base. But that would highlight and add another layer of greenery or whatnot to the bottom of this, as well as it's kind of beef it up just a little bit. And like I said, this is a great solution if you're entertaining and you've got a lot of people, you've got a long table. These little bottles can be grouped together like I have here on a tray, or they can be separated in groups of 2s or 3s down a table. And I once did this for my Easter table, and I did green bottles, green wine bottles. So if you've got leftover wine bottles or whatever in your caliber of items that you've got, think about that with maybe, I did it with white poppies and it was spectacular. So really, really simple, just all white poppies with green bottles. And it was a really fresh and beautiful arrangement for Easter. You could even tuck some little nests and eggs and things like that around. But don't forget about the LED candles or votive candles or anything like that to add to a little collection like this. And it's a really fun, easy way to add pops of color or just something really simple to a table for a fun spring dinner. Anyway, thanks so much everybody for watching. Happy Sunday. Enjoy your day, and we'll see you next time. Take care.